Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is The Good News on Marketing, an industry legend on how to grow bigger, faster. It's a conversation with the founder and chairman of Bill Good Marketing, Bill Good, and Chief Executive Officer Frantz Widmaier. I'm Mindy Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for financial advisors. At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients, or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more. Marketing should be the lifeblood of every successful business. It touches all aspects of what a firm says, how daily business is conducted, how clients are retained, and new prospects are attracted. It's an essential practice that, when done strategically and thoughtfully, can be the biggest game changer and turbocharger for every advisor's practice. And when it comes to marketing in the wealth management industry, Bill Good is one of the top names in the space. As the founder of Bill Good Marketing, Bill and his team focused on not just the messaging, but the delivery and processes around client acquisition and retention, as well as practice management. Because ultimately, messaging is only one piece of the puzzle for a successful wealth management business. Advisors and firms also need solid processes in place to run effectively and optimally serve clients. So we invited Bill, along with his firm's CEO, Frantz Widmaier, to join me in a conversation around one of my favorite topics. We talk about how the role of marketing has changed over the years and what opportunities and challenges advisors and firm leaders have before them. We discuss the value of content and how there's great power hidden in your written, spoken, and video messaging, and the principles around time management and how marketing can either thrive or suffer when not executed properly. Plus, we tackle technology and how it can impact your processes, and much more. This episode will get you thinking and get you moving. You'll walk away with valuable tips and advice from an industry legend, action items you can start on today. So let's get to it. Bill and Frantz, I can't thank you enough for joining me today.
We're very excited, Mindy.
Good. There's a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in. I want to start at the beginning, and we'll start with you, Bill, as the founder and namesake of Bill Good Marketing. Tell me about yourself, your professional journey to launching Bill Good Marketing.
I really started as a writer. I was in the Graduate School of Economics at University of Virginia. I decided I did not want to be a professor. I quit. I drove to New York City, and within 8 months, I managed to land an article in Barron's Business and Financial Weekly. That continued from New York, and then I moved to Los Angeles, and there I met the lady who became my wife, and I got an idea that resulted in what we now call Bill Good Marketing. And the idea was that at the time, Mindy, I was working in what would be called today a call center. I had 83 salespeople reporting to me personally. And it was in that call center that I figured out what I later called the cherries and pits principle, which is when you're prospecting by phone, if someone says, I'm not interested, they're a pit, say thank you very much and move on. And that concept was so popular in financial services that we trained something over 40,000 rookies, mostly in the 80s. So writer, and then I landed on my feet after the company I was writing for declared bankruptcy, and I needed a job on Monday. That led to the call center, so here we are.
Amazing story. So lots to unpack there. But Frantz, let's talk about you. You are the next generation of Bill Good marketing and in a lead role. So tell us a little bit about your professional background.
I started in sales in the software industry. I was 19 when I started a job selling antivirus software to the school systems across the US. I think my first list was a phone book that had IT directors in there and a single sell sheet, what the software did. I mentored under a brilliant sales manager who helped me create and develop that career in sales. As I matured as an account executive, I found that a lot of the problems that salespeople had was a disconnect between sales and marketing. So I naturally went into marketing to try to discover that and uncover what the problem was. Marketing led me onto several different businesses after, and then led me into product, meaning software design itself. And that then took me to working with Bill. And what is that, like 8 to 10 years later, here I am, and we're working together on the final points of a transition of this business that's been around for more than 40 years.
I love it. Thank you for that. So, Bill, I want to come back to you just to talk more about sort of the genesis story of Bill Good Marketing. So what I've learned from doing this podcast for the last 7 or 8 years is that every entrepreneurial story sort of started by where the entrepreneur saw a perceived gap and wanted to fill it. So what was the perceived gap that 40 years ago you were looking to fill?
It was mail merge. How's that for something exciting? I was testing an idea. This is about 1985-ish. And I was selling seminars to the mostly E.F. Hutton, Dean Witter, Payne Weber, Merrill Lynch, the company that became Wells Fargo, blah, blah, blah. And I had converted my prospecting to direct mail. Instead of calling people by phone, I was sending letters to branch managers and following it up. And I had this idea that maybe people who were then called account executives or stockbrokers or whatever, maybe they could use the same tool. And this is early, this is probably 1983, I had a Radio Shack Model 2. And I convinced this one broker in Salt Lake City to let me enter his client list. And one day a bunch of us sat around and I pressed a button and that thing was supposed to start printing, and it just went for several hours. And then it finally started to print. We jumped up and cheered. We all drank a beer, and he made something like $70,000 in the responses to the direct mail campaign that we had. And what I then tried to do was sell a collection of letters. And I would have people send me, I don't know, $200 for this or that collection. And then they'd call back and say, okay, I like these letters. Now, what do I do? Well, you merge them. You mail. Well, how do I do that? And I realized they didn't know how to do that. And so I got the idea that there needed to be a way for someone to manage their prospecting. It needed to involve a computer. And so we solved a mail merge problem and made it easy. And that was the genesis of what we now call the Bill Good Marketing System.
So let's back up for those not familiar. What is Bill Good Marketing's value proposition?
In 1986, Mindy, when I launched the first class of what we would later call the Bill Good Marketing System, I announced that the goal was double production or work half as much. I had not done that then. I crossed my fingers and hoped I could do it. All of my thinking and math and analysis and everything led me to believe that if people followed the prescription that I'd come up with, that would happen. But I didn't know it for certain. Within 2 years, I knew it for certain. And that has remained the value proposition that we have offered however many years since 1986. Double production or work half as much.
Okay, so that's a bold claim. And your website also talks about grow bigger faster, retain clients, build better relationships, plan for succession, blast past plateaus. So, how do you do it? And I'm not asking you to give away what you would charge lots of money for, but give us some idea of how you do what you do and how it's different from what every other coach in the industry might sell.
I think it really comes down to what I call a playbook, which is the summarization of what the Billigan marketing system is. And we still use that same playbook. It consists of 118 best practices that cover technology usage in the form of CRM. It covers client marketing. It covers prospecting. It covers office management as well as branding. And no matter the situation or where the advisor and his team is at in their own professional journey, we can resolve the problem that prevents them from getting to that next step of growth.
So, who are your clients?
So right now we work primarily with advisors that are managing roughly 50 million in assets under management or above. And realistically, if they don't have at least one assistant, it's very difficult to implement the system. About 70% of our client base are RIA or regional. The rest are a mix of independent and wirehouse.
So, minimum 50 million. What's the mean or average client?
About 120 right now.
Got it. Tell me a little bit about the work that you do for them. And what I mean by that is someone is at, let's pick a round number, they're at 100 million and they want to do what you're saying, double production and work half as much. And they also want to retain clients and they want to investigate technology and they want to build a better practice. So they reach out to you and what happens?
So they reach out to us, and what we do is that on our end, on the sales side, is we do an assessment. And the assessment looks at the key areas for growth, the key areas that might create stagnation. Most advisors that come to us have obviously, they're the top of their area. They've had to get through a lot to get to where they're at. And we take a good amount of time, several hours, investigating where they're at. Once they decide they want to work with us, we put them into a strategy meeting with one of our strategists. Our senior strategist has been in the industry for quite a long time. He was over our coaching department for a number of years, then went off and actually implemented what he had learned from us with an advisor and grew that practice from 30 million to, I think, 400 million in a matter of 12 to 15 years. And we go through all the key areas that we know they may be struggling with based off of the conversations that we'd had with them. And then we either put them through like a basic training to familiarize themselves so that they're familiar with our key concepts, philosophies, or we send somebody out to their office. And from there, then they're following a strategy that is either a 12 or 18-month strategy that they work on implementing the foundational best practices. And depending on how quickly they implement these things and how big their team is, then they start moving into client marketing. Client marketing is most important because if they're not servicing their clients the way that we've proven that they should be, then there's a tremendous amount of growth available there. From there, we look at different strategies that they can use to generate additional revenue outside of client marketing in terms of like referral generation, strategic partnerships, different prospecting channels that they may be able to implement. But it's all tailored to what they're capable of doing, what their strengths are, and helping them on the bottom line with their weaknesses.
And so, stick with me on client marketing for a moment. How has the nature of client marketing changed over time for a financial advisor? And I guess what changes have been the most profound?
When we started, client marketing had maybe 2 channels to get information to your client. We define client marketing as the sum total of all communications directed at one's clients to create A, retention, and B, sole proprietorship, meaning the objective of client marketing is to manage 100% of all of a client's liquid net worth. So in order to do that, we have a number of tools. We have what we call the client relationship retention formula, which are a set of steps that are designed to keep clients holding the advisor top of the mind. Then we have what we call the client engagement formula. And this gets clients more active in the practice, and they become engaged rather than being the passive recipients of advice and information and blah, blah, blah. What that creates is a vibrant relationship or set of relationships, and over time, they generate more referrals. And one of the things that we did, by the way, in terms of referral marketing is we forbade people from soliciting referrals. You never ask for referrals. Why not? Because it just doesn't produce referrals. It produces names. And the names are maybe as good as cold call names or something. So the process is designed to generate a real referral, which we define as a name volunteered by a client of someone needing financial help. And that's what gets the advisor's blood boiling when somebody calls up and says, I want you to call my brother-in-law. His Aunt Martha is leaving him $2 million. He doesn't have a clue what to do with it. I told him to call you. And just in case he doesn't, here's his phone number.
Let me ask you about that, Bill. What is the most profound action step or action item that an advisor can take to produce a valuable and tangible and real referral?
Oh, okay. Number one, we get them to stop asking if they're asking at all. Most of them don't ask. They won't even discuss it because they hate asking for referrals. They feel it's demeaning, which it is. It's ineffective, which it is. But they feel guilty that they're not doing it. So we handle that first. Then we begin to teach them how to do what we call promote referrals. And we're trying to create what we call a referral consciousness, which is a state of mind in the client. So when they recognize a referral opportunity, they will think of our advisor first, because a lot of clients at this point have multiple advisors. We want them to think of our client first and then reach out and say, I want you to call my brother-in-law who's inheriting some money from his Aunt Martha. The promotion of referrals occurs by letter, by email, with what we call referral conversations, with referral signage in the office. It's not even dripping. It's much more of a misting process.
Interesting. Frantz mentioned that your average client is about 120 million or so in assets. But let's say we're talking about an advisor with $1 billion under management, $1 billion in assets under management. Does the same process hold true in terms of what it takes to make yourself referable, to promote the referral consciousness, no matter how big you are, no matter how much in assets you manage?
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. I coach the son of a $1 billion client of mine, somebody who's been on my system since 1991. And when he started with me about 6 years ago, he had $86 million. He just passed $600 million. And he's moved up in the wealth food chain, if you will. He's now getting referrals from business owners who are wanting to sell their business. But the rules are the same. We do not solicit referrals. We promote referrals. We let them know their referrals are valued and accepted. And it works all the way from 120 million to 2 billion.
I'd love it if you guys would share some success stories about advisor clients, particularly around growth. So let's talk about this one first and foremost you just mentioned, an advisor that with 86 million when he comes to you and now 600 million. What do you think are the most profound things he did to accelerate that growth?
Well, the first thing I had him do, Mindy, is become a seminar presenter. Now, part of the reason for doing that is one of the problems in the industry right now for young advisors. They don't get the opportunity to talk to enough people. It takes many hundreds or thousands of contacts to develop a sense of how to read people, how to understand people. So he was a Wharton graduate, and he was a very nerdy guy. He was an Excel wizard, and he was not very much of a rainmaker. So we started in a seminar program, and over probably that lasted maybe 4 years until he just couldn't do any more of them. But in that time period, that's when he went from maybe 86 million to 200 million, talking to lots and lots of people.
So how did he get them the additional 3x growth from what was most profound to get from 200 million to 600 million?
He's now at a point where he has many of the people who attended his seminar were business owners. And as he cultivated them, some of them began to sell businesses. Some of them referred to their business colleagues that were selling businesses, because he and the entire team is very good on structuring a sale so that when it's all said and done, the equity in the business is now equity in retirement accounts.
I love it. So how does a nerdy guy who isn't that good at giving a seminar become a master seminar presenter?
Well, I'm going to give you 3 laws here. The first one is repetition. And the second one, that's also repetition. And the third one, well, repetition.
Okay. The more you do it, the better you get.
And it was not just doing it, but it was doing it and then reviewing what happened and making changes and tweaking. And I'll give you an example. When he started, he was using about 25 slides. I cut him to 15. Then I cut him to 10. Then I cut him to 5. And when he gives the seminar today, which he hasn't in a while, he uses 0 slides. People don't come to seminars to watch slides. They come to evaluate a financial advisor. So he stands up there with no slides, no visuals, nothing except a whiteboard. And he completely engages them. And it took some time to be able to do that.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I'd love to hear a couple of other success stories, just the kinds of things that your advisor clients have done that have been most impactful on their growth.
So we have in our communications in the office, we have a channel called Winning. And I'll just go ahead and read you something. We have, looks like 4 different success stories from this week, but I'll just pick one. And this particular advisor and his group this is an announcement of stats from the last year or for this year so far. This particular advisor and his group have brought in just under 40 million so far this year. 17 million came from their existing clients that have brought in new money, 23 million from new clients, and they've got 12 million about to come in over the next month or so. Then another 17 million over the next 6 months. So this is from client marketing. And this is also something that Bill didn't mention on the other side of what he's doing with this advisor that he's working with is the office management, seminar management, and the communications that go out. All of these different systems support the advisor and the team members in generating revenue and creating retention. This particular channel, we get dozens of success stories every month. And it's just through the foundational things that we've discovered to be true, and they remain true. And there's not a lot that we have to change in this particular thing, because I deeply feel that the reason why what we do is successful is because it's developing and maintaining relationships.
Yeah. And how about a success story of someone that did what you talk about, doubled production and worked half as much?
Well, we could talk about a group at Janney Montgomery Scott. This is about a 20-year relationship. And when he came on board, he was doing about 300,000. And today they're somewhere between 2 and 3 billion. And part of it is sticking to the knitting. There are changes that occur as one evolves from, he was a cold caller when he started. He would not have to make a cold call today because they have a tremendous amount of client referrals, and they probably have one of the strongest strategic partner networks of anybody. That happens to be a very important, what we refer to as a channel. But just to give you an example, he told me a story one time. He sold a 401k to a group of doctors, ophthalmologists or something like that. And when they get a new client, they always have them write down who is their attorney, who's their accountant, and they find out who their key advisors are. So he comes back to the office and he looks at the attorney and he's, or the accountant. He says, oh, we know him. We send him a lot of business. So he called him and told him, yeah, we just opened the 401k. He said, well, I'm really glad you did that because they have needed another advisor. I'm going to put in a good word for you. Well, that resulted in more business from that group of doctors. And part of that gets back to something that does not get a lot of discussion, which is what is the proper use of a CRM? And the official definition, Mindy, of what we do is the Bill Good Marketing System is a CRM-based client marketing, prospecting, and practice management system, keyword system. Mm-hmm. And we spend a fair amount of time training an advisor and training a team in what we call the law. And it's not a law, it's not a recommendation, it's not a suggestion, it's the law. And the law says every contact with the client or prospect produces an updated record. Well, when my client brought back all this information from this doctor's group, he's going over it and writing up what we call record update forms so that it gets properly entered into the computer. And that's when he realized, hey, I know this guy.
Yeah. Bill, let me ask you a question. So now this group is managing, you say, 2 to 3 billion in assets. Why do they still need a Bill Good marketing system? Don't they know it all?
Well, probably because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The relationship between them and us is not broke. And they have continued they use the CRM we developed. They use many of the practice management tools. We've learned some things from them. And here's an important point, Mindy. The system, as Frantz mentioned, is 128 best practices. And one thing we learned a while ago is that the team that implements more best practices better goes to the Super Bowl, goes to the World Series, goes to wherever they want to go. And it's almost like, I don't care really where they start. Let's just take some things that we know are the best ways to do something and start with that. And it could be, how do you process a referral? Well, there's a best way to do that. It could be, how do you confirm an appointment? Well, there's a process for that. And as they implement these best practices, which become embedded in the culture of the team, they don't have to think about, how do you do that? Everybody knows how to do it. Mm-hmm. And the more they do these best practices, the better they get at it, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel every time they need to confirm an appointment.
Yep. Let me ask you both a question. You mentioned these letters. I know that's a big part of your best practices are these letter templates. And as a firm that we always follow up every conversation with an email or a letter or some form of content because we, like you, are a content machine. Tell us about letter writing. In other words, in a world where the prospect or the client is so swamped with emails and their inboxes are clogged, and they're probably less likely to open a letter because they get a million solicitations. What are some best practices? Like, why is a letter still the right way to go? And what is it that makes your letters, or what are some best practices around it?
All right, I'll talk about one particular type of letter that we call hand-holding. And given the nature of this wild and woolly economy in which we live, there are events that occur that cause clients to feel stressed, shall we say, unhappy, worried, they can't sleep at night, blah, blah, blah. What is my advisor thinking? So when one of these events happens, what typically happens is they call and call. And so the advisor spends hours, days, sometimes weeks responding to worried clients. Well, beginning in 1998, there was a sudden drop in the market, and people were telling me, Bill, I can't do anything. I'm getting all these calls. And my thought was, well, what if when something happens, we tell them what they're thinking? And that was really the origin of handholding. And since then, we have written, I don't know, hundreds of handholding letters. And if something happens tomorrow, let's say tomorrow's Thursday, by Friday, there will be something out in our library. We will send out what we call a special edition of our newsletter. And the people that get it will take that letter. And in many cases, it's already compliance approved because we have great relations with some of the major compliance departments. And they know that when these handholding letters comes out, we can typically get them done in 18 hours, 24 hours, sometimes 2 days, much faster than they're used to getting. And what we find is people will read a letter before they remember that they had something hit their inbox along with 150 other things.
And you're talking about a letter that they receive in the mail.
In the mail, printed in the mail with a stamp. There's a whole strategy for how you address a letter, what kind of stamp you use. The stamp actually will help differentiate my mail from the junk mail that my firm sends out.
Because what is it that's differentiated about it?
I've got an oversized stamp on it, not an indicia.
Ah, that's interesting. Interesting. Okay, great. All right, let me ask you a question. As I mentioned, I know you are a content machine, as are we, and you've written many articles. So I spent some time on your website in preparation for this conversation. And a couple of things intrigued me. So the first one was you talked about time management. You talk about model day principles. Can you tell us what the best practices are around that?
Yeah, the model day is a series of time blocks, each addressing a particular type of activity. And the different types of activity add up to the types of activity necessary to grow a business. So you could have a time block, and we use the term a mini day, M-I-N-I-D-A-Y, a mini day, a little day. Why a little day? Because just like today, it starts and it's finished. I can't get to midnight tonight and say, God, Tuesday was such a great day. I'll take another 2 hours of Tuesday. No, it's done. And so let's just say that an advisor has set aside an hour from 8 to 9 in the morning to call clients. Okay. What will happen is he will pick off the most important clients to call between 8 and 9 because he knows at 9 o'clock the day is over and we got to move on to the next day. So, and the other part of this, Mindy, is by grouping similar actions together, you can develop momentum. I didn't figure that out, but I just combined it with some other things to produce this idea of the model day.
I love it. Another one I read is on your site, an advisor in Overland Park, Kansas, who quietly revolutionized the referral process. What was the secret sauce and what can others learn from it?
All right. What he really did is figure out he created a team, if you will, of professionals, accountants, attorneys, real estate agents, insurance agents, life insurance agents, mortgage brokers. They all work together. And he has an annual meeting where he gives out an award to the one that did the best. And they all share information. And we came up with an idea some years ago that most advisors who say they have a strategic partner don't. They have what we call a strategic one-way street, where they give referrals to the accountant, they give more referrals to the accountant, and maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, they'll say, I haven't heard anything from you. Well, I give out your card, I can't control what they do with it. That's a one-way street. We help them build real strategic partners. And we define a strategic partnership as two non-competitive professionals united for the benefit of the client and helping each other. And most people miss the and helping each other. Well, our Overland Park advisor figured out how to get not only people, them helping him and him helping them, but them helping each other.
And what do you think was the most profound thing he did to encourage that?
Probably the meetings that he has, where he welds them together into a team.
I love it. Makes them feel like a team. Next one is really interesting to me. You talk about video marketing as an incredibly important tool. And I couldn't agree more, because I think that video is the way of the future. It makes people come across as authentic. But what are the best strategies that an advisor considering using video can deploy?
The most important thing is the mindset. And the reason why I say that is because you can't venture into any sort of digital marketing or digital education or anything like that without understanding that it takes time and it takes effort. People that we see that are most successful at it have a long-term viewpoint. They've broken down the topics they're going to discuss. These are topics that they're expert in. And when expert, I don't mean that they use a ton of terminology and they are talking down at people. I'm from the standpoint that they're so good at or they understand the subject matter so well that they can explain it in a very easy to understand way. And then the time that they're spending and the money that they're spending and the production quality, then they have to look at how they're going to distribute that and the channels they're going to use to distribute that content. We have a group of advisors that are doing really well online, but that's because they're spending the time, they're spending the effort, and they know it's a long-term thing.
How important is video as part of that digital marketing strategy?
It's incredibly important. If you are trying to, or if your efforts are in the direction of creating a referral consciousness, and that referral consciousness includes online, or if you're looking at using online as a channel to bring in new clients, new assets, then video is incredibly important, because the way that consumers buy or the way that consumers research is it's all independent now. So if you're, let's say, for example, you're doing an ad campaign on Google search and you're targeting people that are looking for financial planning. Now, when they see you or they see an ad that shows up, they want to A, understand what you're saying. B, they want to at least feel like they could work with you. And then C, if they fill out some sort of form or they engage with your website or they request a callback, you want to make sure that you have the ability to do that quickly and you have your systems in place for not only bringing that person in or having that phone call, but then educating them and nurturing them after that meeting. So video is a good way to do that too, because then if you have the right technology, you can put them into a targeted drip that focuses on maybe on the subject area that they're interested in or the problems that they're trying to solve. But people don't like to really read too much anymore. So you have to have multiple ways for them to consume media that comes from you.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. So can advisors in the wirehouse world or the traditional space where compliance has become pretty heavy-handed, can they deploy these video strategies with freedom?
Very difficult.
Yeah. So how about the notion of potentially changing firms as a way of accelerating growth?
Well, it can be very important. It can enable a person to approach a market that they were unable to approach before. It's important that it be well thought out, that there be a strategy for it, and that they are able to, in fairly short order, bring in at least 80 to 90% of their assets, say in the first 3 to 6 months. And after that, we like to see people approach 90 or 95%.
I couldn't agree with those comments more. I think that people that move for the sake of getting a check or because their friend moved or moving for the wrong reasons that don't have to do with the desire to grow the practice or to better serve clients are somewhat misguided. But moving for the right reasons, if you believe that a move to another firm can accelerate growth because you'll have more freedom or better technology or better ability to differentiate yourself, or a firm that's going to pay for you to use Bill Good marketing or something of the sort, those are good reasons to move. And I think you'd agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Frantz, a question for you. How about technology and your thoughts on how technology, AI, and the like can drive growth and make an advisor's business better?
Especially over the last 4, almost 5 years now, we've seen the viewpoint or the mindset about technology shift. Obviously, since we came out with our first CRM or even the fourth version of our CRM, there are a lot more people that are solving problems through technology. But especially recently, technology has been an enabler for a lot of advisors in their offices that are able to embrace it successfully. And when I say successfully, it's incredibly important because it's really easy to go and look at something and understand that it's designed to solve a problem, but it's an entirely different thing to actually be able to solve the problem with that platform and have the people in place and have the ability as an office to maintain the best practices on using that. I think that especially AI is going to enable business owners to do a lot more. So I feel like its purpose over the next few years is going to be to enable people to interact with computers and software in a way that they hadn't been able to before. We ourselves are actually building an AI tool that enables advisors and their teammates to interact with a CRM in a conversational manner. And I think that a lot of the things that prevent people from using software is the interface. But if you're able to simply communicate with an application the same way that you would talk to an assistant, a teammate, or a partner, and it's able to execute and communicate back to you and further clarify, then I think that's a powerful tool.
Is there a scary side to that? Like a side that advisors should be worried about to that end?
I don't think that this at this point is something that's going to be similar to the way that when robo-advisors came out, there was this scare with that.
Yep.
But I think that the industry that we're in requires a human relationship. I think anything that has emotion attached to it, and money's a very emotional thing. Your life's hard work is an emotional thing. I think that whether good or bad, the clients that they're working with want someone to talk to. They want someone to yell at. They want someone to celebrate the joy and the stress of life. And I
Yeah.
don't think that AI is going to be able to replace that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a really good tool, but I don't think it's a replacement for being a good advisor. Let me ask you guys something else. I read one of your client testimonials that talked about your program having enabled the client to move from the role of financial advisor producer with one assistant to a CEO mentality with a 9-member team and having tripled revenue within 5 years. Now, that's really impressive. So, what can you tell us about that?
Sure. So this advisor, when he came to us, he was a bit of a mess internally, structurally. And over that period of time, we worked with him to be able to hire the right people. Sometimes we see people that have like multiple assistants, but there's no real delineation on what these people should be doing. We have a very codified team structure, and that structure supports the advisor. So we implemented that structure with him. We helped implement automated processes to move things through the organization much faster. We implemented with him statistics to help him be able to monitor the actual production of the individuals in the office without having to micromanage. And by working with him to just make the decision to allow his teammates to do their jobs, he woke up one day and basically those were the first steps towards where he's at now.
His goal was to get himself out of production and become a CEO? Was what he found soulful?
I don't know if that was necessarily the goal he stated to us in the beginning, but I think that his happiness as he discovered it was that. He knew that he needed something to change. He knew that he liked his job. He knew that he liked his clients, but he also knew that it was too much.
Right. Other than restructuring things, what do you think are some of the most profound or impactful things he did to really accelerate growth? Because going from being the sole producer with an assistant to a 9-member team is impressive, but tripling revenue in 5 years rather, is much more about restructuring infrastructure. It's about real growth.
It's really simple. The model day. It's an incredibly powerful thing when implemented correctly.
The time blocks,
Yes.
grouping different types of activities.
Yes. And then implementing service models.
And what does that mean exactly?
Well, that means grouping clients into service models, and those service models including intervals when you interact with them. We have something else that we call the 90-day no contact, which means that each client receives a communication or call from someone in the office at least every 90 days. But you can't just do that. You have to systematize it. So helping them come up with those service models and implementing those service models. But realistically, the things that and I think a lot of times the advisors don't realize that it's the processes that you put in place, that you train the team on, that you get agreement on, that you all work off of. And once you have processes in place, all the chaos and the things flying around just settle down. And then it just becomes routine. And then that's what you just continue to do it.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. It sounds like these letters and the contacting clients every 90 days, et cetera, works well with clients because they want to hear from you. What's your feeling on prospecting, using these strategies with respect to prospecting?
A while ago, Mindy, somebody asked me that question, and I hadn't thought about it very much. And I made an assumption. I said, what if we treat prospects like clients? So we began implementing the client relationship retention formula with prospects. So let me give you a definition here. A prospect is someone who has been referred or responded to a campaign, and here's the key word, that you want to do business with. So that's who we're dealing with. And if we begin treating them differently, and this can get down to little things like sending them a birthday letter, sending them a hand-holding letter, touching base on a 90-day no-contact call. So we're beginning to build an identity, a relationship before they become clients. And at a point, they almost become a client and then sign up.
Got it. I love that. I think that's right. So other than concerns, we talked about some of the concerns. I want to fast forward or pivot to talk about the future. What are the things other than AI? And I think you spoke, Frantz, of exactly what a lot of people feel like, that AI will be a wonderful tool, but the best advisors will use it as a tool, it won't replace them. But what other kinds of things do you think advisors are worried about and ought to be worried about?
I think that what we're seeing is a tremendous amount of consolidation in the industry. We've noticed that where we used to, probably 10 years ago, work with a lot of single advisors, they started moving into partnerships. Now what we're seeing is not just a partnership, but 3, 4, 5 advisors and larger teams than that are surface. And because of that, we're seeing a lot more competition. We're seeing disorganization, but these single advisors are becoming far. And there's probably somewhat of a fear of either not differentiating yourself anymore, that all this money being poured into RAs from private equity, for the guys out there that are running their own business, that's concerning, right? Not only that, but we're also seeing advisors retiring and not enough new people coming in. So for those people that are concerned, I would say that finding a team to work with, finding a group that you like working with, maybe taking a little bit less money to hire that next person is incredibly important. I think also that trying to solve problems through something that seems easy is not always the best way to do it. Sometimes it does take work and it takes extra hours at the office to intelligently solve a problem rather than buying some off-the-piece software. And the other side of it, the last bit, is that we are moving more and more into a technology-based industry. And spending the extra time to understand what's coming out, what people are doing, what people are using is going to be an important part of any business. And if the advisor simply isn't really able to grasp or do that, or it's like you've tried and you've banged your head against the wall and you just can't figure it out, hiring somebody to help you that can do that stuff, that can automate more processes, somebody like ourselves that could help them put in systems in place and get a team around them to support them until they decide to move on to their next adventure.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Thank you for that. So let me ask you a parting question. We know that no matter what role we play in this industry, it's really important that we remain relevant, that we reinvent ourselves, that we pivot, that we stay ahead of the curve. What do you think are some of the most significant things that an advisor can do, or the areas in which an advisor can, as parting wisdom, can stay ahead of the curve?
I think implementing best practices, because here's the thing about best practices. They evolve. And the list of best practices today is different than it was 5 years ago, and it's certainly different than it was 20 years ago. And from our point of view, one of our primary jobs is to ensure that the best practices we deploy are the current, really best practices. Mm-hmm. So we are refining and rewriting and tweaking and doing all of those things on a constant, ongoing basis. So that would be my take. Do what works and keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore.
Frantz, any parting wisdom from you? Anything that you'd want to share with our listening audience?
Yeah, definitely. I think that in everything that we do, surrounding ourselves with people that we enjoy spending time with. And that is on both ends. So that's the team members that you work with in your business, that you work on your business with, but as well as the clients that you share your own professional journey with. And I found through my own journey as a professional that having people that are on board with you with a mission that the goals that you're trying to achieve is more important than maybe having somebody that could do a better job than somebody else, but is not nice to have around. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with clients. Sometimes you have a client that might be worth a good amount of money, but they're just not pleasant to work with. You don't look forward to talking to them. When their phone call comes in, it's going to be something that just makes you go, oh, I don't want to do this today. It's just not worth it. So I would say build good teams, work with good people, and the rest will sort itself out.
I love it. Bill and Frantz, thank you so very much for your time, for being so transparent and thoughtful with your answers. Clearly, there's real staying power to Bill Good. When we talk about the notion of reinvention and pivoting, clearly over 40 years, you've mastered that. You continue to do that. And I'm really grateful for everything you've shared with us today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for having us, Mindy.
Pleasure. As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibility seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.